What if the patterns that define the universe, the pulse of life itself, could be understood not through the simplicity of opposites, but through a deeper interplay of forces? What if, behind every question of light and shadow, affirmation and negation, there was a third presence, a balancing principle that transforms opposition into harmony and stillness into creativity? For centuries, human thought has gravitated toward binaries, good versus evil, truth versus falsehood, being versus non-being. But the Gnostics, those seekers of hidden wisdom, saw something more. They saw that reality doesn't rest on duality alone. Instead, it unfolds through a triadic logic, a dynamic pattern of unity, tension, and balance that gives rise to all things. Today, we'll explore how the Gnostic understanding of the monad, dyad, and triad provides a blueprint not only for the cosmos, but for the systems, ideas, and relationships that shape our lives. He is the invisible spirit, perfect in purity, immeasurable in greatness, and no one can know him, for he is ineffable. The Apocryphon of John, Nag Hammadi Library. Imagine standing before an unbounded radiance that pervades all things, yet remains itself unmoved and unseen. This is how the ancient Gnostics often spoke of the monad, the original source of all reality, beyond form, beyond name, beyond even our capacity to define. It is neither a being nor a place, but rather the principle of emergent unity, the silent potential from which every possibility flows. When the Apocryphon of John describes the monad as immeasurable in greatness, it reminds us that unity, in Gnostic thought, isn't something we can grasp through logical categories alone. It's a dynamic fullness that exceeds all boundaries, yet subtly gives rise to every form and pattern we come to know. In this sense, the monad isn't just a distant cosmic principle. Rather, Gnostics saw it as the indwelling spark in all existence, an inexhaustible fountain of life that animates every being from within. And because it cannot be named or pointed to in any literal sense, the Gnostics resorted to poetic language, calling it the invisible spirit, or describing it as unfathomable light, all to capture the sense of a reality that transcends our usual modes of understanding. From a formal standpoint, we might say the monad expresses the idea of emergent coherence. When the elements of a system come together in harmony, they reveal a unity that wasn't there before, a unity rooted in a power beyond them. It's crucial to realize that for Gnostic teachers, recognizing this hidden source had immediate practical importance. Gnosis, knowing in the deepest sense, meant awakening to the monad within oneself and recognizing that the unity we seek is already present, waiting to be uncovered. Formally, we treat the monad as the ultimate context of balance, the final home in which all triadic patterns find resolution. But as the Nag Hammadi texts often hint, it is also a presence in our hearts, a silent witness to the interplay of forces that shape our thoughts and our world. From the undivided one came forethought and reflection, two aspects yet inseparable in their source. When Gnostic scriptures speak of the first stirrings away from the silent fullness, they describe a moment of division, a divine reflection through which the undivided source begins to perceive itself. This is the dyad, not merely two objects side by side, but the principle of contrast, the tension between affirmation and negation, between I am and I am not, between presence and absence or light and its shadow. If the monad symbolizes the pure potential of unity, then the dyad carries the seed of all differentiation. Gnostic texts often describe the arrival of a primal thought or forethought, sometimes personified as Barbelo, that emerges from the immeasurable one. In this split, the one remains itself, while simultaneously reflecting upon its own boundlessness. Suddenly, a dynamic is born, an interplay between the fullness, affirmation, and the recognition of something other than fullness, negation. This tension is the engine of creation, for without distinction, there can be no form, no movement, no possibility of growth. From a formalization perspective, the dyad sets the stage for logical differentiation. It's the conceptual bedrock for understanding how systems define their boundaries, what is included, what is excluded, what is agreed upon, what is rejected. In Gnostic thought, this tension is not a flaw but a necessary moment in the unfolding of being. Two aspects, yet inseparable in their source, as one might say, underscores that these opposites remain forever linked by the unity they came from. By placing affirmation and negation at the core, the Gnostics highlight how every movement away from the monad is still guided by it, just as every reflection of light retains something of its origin. The word, logos, sprang forth, self-begotten, to bring order and shape, and through him the hidden became manifest. Prologue to the Gospel of John. Now we arrive at the triad, the step where differentiation doesn't simply remain at odds with itself, but resolves into a creative, living relationship. The Gnostics often personified this principle as the logos, the organizing word or thought that embodies the interplay of opposites and channels it into a new reality. When the word sprang forth, it wasn't just another addition to the cosmic scene. It was an emergent pattern, a bridge through which the fullness of the monad and the tension of the dyad find expression in the realm of formed existence. Formally, we speak of the triad as balanced integration, the logic by which affirmation and negation yield a dynamic third principle. It's the key to understanding how coherence arises out of opposition. How, when two forces push against each other, a constructive pattern can emerge. The Gnostics saw this process woven into the fabric of everything, in the architecture of the spiritual realms, the pleroma, in the dynamics of human consciousness, and in the drama of cosmic creation. They understood that the triad is not an endpoint. It's the lens through which the infinite possibilities of unity begin to take shape, leading to infinite new emanations and unfoldings. As we compare this to formal logical triads, our structures of relationships among three elements, these Gnostic insights provide a metaphysical depth. The triad isn't just another type of relationship, it's the gateway to emergence itself. It tells us that balance doesn't arise from neutralizing opposites, but rather from inviting them to participate in a mutual dance that transcends mere opposition. The hidden becomes manifest, as the Gnostic texts say, is a way of reminding us that new realities are always waiting to be born whenever tension finds balance, whenever polarity discovers a unifying principle that can hold both yes and no in a creative embrace. In daily life, this means seeing tension not as a threat, but as the soil out of which new growth emerges. The same principle guides us in our formal triadic models. Every system rests on these three pillars: an underlying unity, a defining polarity, and a mechanism of integration. This is how the cosmos continues to unfold, not just out there in the celestial realms, but within each of us, every time we discover a way to hold our own contradictions and let them give rise to a deeper harmony. And so we return, as all things must, to the silent vastness of the monad. Yet now we see it not as an abstraction or a distant mystery, but as the ground of all that is, both within us and beyond us. It is the stillness that contains every possibility, the source from which light and shadow, affirmation and negation, and every act of creation flow. To the Gnostics, this was not a riddle to be solved, but a truth to be lived, a call to awaken to the patterns that weave through existence, and to recognize ourselves as both part of the unfolding and its reflection. The dyad reminds us that creation begins in tension. It is the interplay of opposites that gives the universe its shape, the yes and the no, the fullness and the void, the movement that stirs the stillness into motion. This is not a conflict to be avoided, but the necessary tension that allows existence to differentiate, to come alive. Without this sacred polarity, the fullness of the monad would remain unspoken, a silent sea without ripple or wave. And then from this tension, the triad emerges, not as a resolution that erases difference, but as a relationship that transforms it. The triad is the pattern of balance, the dance of opposites that gives rise to something greater. It is the logos, the creative word, the force that takes the interplay of being and not being and manifests it into form, into beauty, into the ever-expanding web of life and thought. The Gnostics knew that these principles were not confined to the heavens or hidden texts. They are alive in every breath, every moment of struggle, every act of creation. To live is to participate in the unfolding of the triad, to stand between the tensions of affirmation and negation, and to find within their interplay the emergence of something new. And yet, the story does not end there. For even as the triad weaves its patterns of balance and emergence, it always points us back to the monad. Every act of creation, every harmony achieved, every pattern realized is but a ripple on the surface of the infinite. The monad is both the beginning and the end, the source and the destination, the silent truth that underlies all the complexity we see. In the Gnostic view, this is the gift of knowing, not the possession of knowledge, but the awakening to the patterns that bind us to the infinite. The monad whispers through the dyad and sings through the triad, and in that song we find ourselves. To see this pattern is to see the world not as fragmented or broken, but as a living whole, endlessly unfolding, endlessly returning to the silent source. So let us walk forward with this understanding, not as mere observers, but as participants in the divine pattern. Let us embrace the tensions, seek the balance, and let the creative dance of the triad lead us ever closer to the boundless ocean of the monad and to which we shall return.